Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Crown Liquor's video weblog. We are going to have a wonderful experience today and blind taste with one of my fantastic friends, Mr. Arthur Black of RNDC out of Indianapolis and Michigan. Busy man, travels a lot, so we certainly appreciate your time today.
Yeah, love to be here.
Cool. So what we're going to do is evaluate 5 different proprietary red blends out of the 2009 vintage, and then we're also going to do 6 different 2008 Napa Valley Cabernets. So we're going to go ahead and get things started. Thanks again for your time as always. So we're going to do the 2008 Napa Valley Cabernets first. So we're going to go ahead and walk through this process, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as we do. So here's the wine number 1.
Wine number 1.
Cool.
Always during a tasting process, you kind of want to utilize a real easy acronym SAM: sight, aromatics, mouthfeel. So visually speaking, you get certain clues, certain indications about how the wine looks, and these are all pretty well made, high quality Napa Valley wines based on Cabernet, and you should probably assume that most of these wines are going to be on the opaque side.
Sure. Relatively dark. I mean, pretty high extracted wines.
Yeah, there's slight deviations here and there. I mean, I'm looking between wine 1 and 3 right now, and whenever I taste and look at a wine, I usually extend 1 or 2 of my fingers behind the glass so that I can see if I see my fingers on the opposing side. And I can marginally see it on wine number 1. I cannot see it at all on wine number 3. Generally speaking, the more concentrated a wine is, the darker it is, the more opaque it is, the more mouthfeel, the more intensity, the more extract and weight it's probably going to have. But all these are going to be 2 stainers to one degree or another. So dark ruby, slightly less color as it gets to the meniscus, the exterior, so a slightly watery finish, which is not uncommon. But definitely, it's showing to be youthful. These are 08s. These are all babies.
Yeah, lots of time. And most of these wines, I mean, we're going to see the opportunity to consume them between 8 to 10 years plus for a plateau of maturity for sure. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. These will take plenty of time to really evolve and mature and bottle. You can also, when you're tasting, if you're not comfortable just doing it by hand, you can take your glass and roll it on your table. Just keep it at a slightly above 45-degree angle so you don't spill it out. We wouldn't want to spill any of these wines.
No. So let's see what's on the nose.
First thing whenever tasting, you want to make sure the wine's clean. That is, that it's showing well. If you stick your nose in a glass and you smell mold, that would be bad. If you smell vinegar, that would be bad. If you smelled sherry and you're not drinking sherry, that would be bad as well. And none of that is showing on this wine, so it's a clean wine.
So let's talk about fruit components first.
What do you get?
We were just talking about it before. I mean, black currant,
yep.
A little bit of blueberry jam maybe.
Dark currant, black currant, cassis.
Cassis.
There are some oak aromatics, there's baking spice, there's a little bit of cedar,
sure.
Subtle hints of tobacco and a slight herbal element. Cabernet Sauvignon is a grape that is known to have a certain abundance of a compound called pyrazine. It's a herbal kind of almost bell pepperish, sometimes aloe, sure. Sometimes menthol, sometimes eucalyptus. And every once in a while in wines like Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, it might show itself as jalapeno and tomato leaf. Go stick your nose in a glass of Sauvignon Blanc from the islands and let me know if you get that. But here it's just like mesclun greens and a little bit of bell pepper to it.
Sure. Let's see what's on the palate.
Just a preference to the audience, I was not disgusted by the wine I just tasted by spitting it out. I'm doing that because as a taster, you really need to appreciate the fact that you're going to be tasting several wines during the course of a day. And aside from the unnecessary caloric intake, that's that whole job occupational hazard of getting inebriated. So by spitting, we're allowing ourselves to get through this flight and still being coherent by the time we get to the end of it. It's a lovely wine. I'm just spitting so that, you know, I am where I need to be when I get to wine number 6. So when you're out tasting, do it discreetly, you know, just lean over, find a bucket, spit. It's totally kosher. It's a professional thing.
Absolutely.
The wine's balanced.
I think so.
parts come together.
Sure. I think it's relatively well integrated. I mean, I think the fruit is certainly not overpowering the wood. The wood's not overpowering the fruit. You know, I don't think it has incredibly lively acidity necessarily. I would say it's moderate.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, and keep in mind too, when we're talking about Napa Valley specifically, relatively warm climate, obviously you need that for Cabernet to ripen completely, you know, but it does have some balance and some harmony. I think it does.
Cabernet is never a particularly acidic grape variety. It has good acid structure to it, and acid is definitely key and extremely important. But it's not like Pinot Noir, it's not like Sangiovese, it's not like Nebbiolo that naturally have these screaming, wicked high levels of acidity. But this has appropriate levels. There's good tannin structure to it. Oak is well integrated. It's a long finish.
I think so too. Well over a minute.
Yeah, it's a well-made wine. It's hard to sort of rate this wine without tasting throughout the rest of them.
I agree with you.
But I definitely give this wine a very positive score. I like the fruit, I like the oak. I don't think the alcohol's out of whack. So let's just see how it compares to the lineup.
Sounds great.
Number two?
Number two.
Definitely staining the glass as well.
Sure.
It's going to be a common thread through all these wines. Visually, they're all very similar. I mean, after all, we're all talking about Cabernet coming from Napa Valley, so if they all look similar, it should not be shocking. Sure. It actually is a good thing.
And what do we got on the nose?
On the nose, this actually seems to have a little bit less opulent fruit than the first wine.
Slightly more muted.
Yeah, a little bit more oak is showing out of it. There's kind of like a caramelized oak stave, which is not a negative characteristic. It's just a manifestation of the oak regimen it goes through.
Sure.
But there's some great baking spices, and again, that sort of cedar strip, cigar, box element.
And I think the primary fruit components are exactly what we talked about on the first wine too. I mean,
currants, black cherry, and it's showing a little bit of pencil lead too.
A little bit.
Kind of a cool little aromatic descriptor we associate with high quality Cabernets coming from Napa Valley oftentimes.
Let's see what's on the palate.
A little bit more tannin.
I was going to say it feels a little firmer on the palate to me.
Yeah. Slight bit more grip.
I think so.
Alcohol levels, I'd say, are approximately the same, but I'm thinking I'm getting a little bit more acid structure out of wine number two than I am in wine number one.
I could see that. It seems to me it might not be, it doesn't seem to be nearly as elegant as wine number one. I mean, slightly more masculine, just based on the tannin structure.
I think between the two, it would come down as a matter of preference. You know, what kind of wine do you
like? Sure. But this one seems to be a little bit more masculine.
Yeah.
A little bit more broad-shouldered. Slightly, but not by a whole lot.
Yeah, I think that one might need to open up a little bit more. So it seems to have more presence on the palate, whereas this one was a little bit more aromatically profound. But ultimately, in terms of structure, it would come down to a taster's preference.
Sure.
Do you like something that's a little bit more grip, slightly more concentrated, or do you want something that's a little bit more opulent, a little bit more ripe? Wine number three?
Sure.
So this one, this is darker than the other two. And it's darker than wine number four.
It's pretty close to 5, though, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a slight hue difference. Wine number 3 is slightly more purple than wine number 5, which whenever you see slight variations in hues on red wines, typically the older the wine, or perhaps the more the wine was aged in an oak barrel, that is more exposure to oxygen, because an oak barrel is an aerobic vessel. So say if this wine spent 16 months in oak and this wine spent 14 months in oak, you're more likely to have a little bit of a deviation in color. Red wines, as they get older or they're exposed to oxygen, actually lose color. So what might start off as eggplant or very purple in its youth will turn to a ruby and a garnet, and when you look at a really old wine, you'll see the brick and the orange and everything. So
as opposed to white wines, which actually
gain color. but red wines lose. And I mean, these wines are both the same age, but I'm guessing because of that slight bit of a ruby hue in wine number 5, I'm assuming this probably just visually spent a little bit more time in barrel than wine number 3.
Right.
Ooh,
I mean,
there's a little bit of sediment in here. Do you have any sediment in your glass?
I don't see any immediately.
Okay, I've got a few little pieces of chunk.
A little chunky.
Yeah. If you want.
Oh, I can see it now. I just couldn't see it initially.
If you want to be a geek, you could call this turbidity, or my favorite, flocculation.
Flocculation.
It is a word. Look it up. But you know, a little bit of sediment is not bad. The sediment it's basically just the tannins. Bink. Tannins really they like themselves. They're colloidal. They gum together and build compounds and polymerize. And sometimes they build together and build macromolecular structures that are no longer soluble, so they dissipate out. So there's no negative suggestion by seeing some chunk in your glass.
And then, so unfiltered, unfined?
Right.
Right.
You would more likely see some sediment than a wine that's been very filtered or very fine.
Correct. So keep that in mind. And certain Napa Valley producers are obviously implementing those types of techniques or lack thereof in not going through that additional process.
Smell that.
Wow, that's incredibly expressive.
Yeah.
Wonderfully expressive.
This to me with wine number 3, we've gone from the dark currant and black cherries to an actual like concentration, a higher level of fruit liqueur almost, or compote. Like reduced blackberry concentrate, stuff like that. And I'm pretty excited about tasting this wine. And that's the first one I swallowed. That makes 2 of us. That's showing really well. There's presence, there's alcohol, and there's opulence to it. But
it's got some weight on the palate, particularly the mid palate. I think the first 2 don't seem to have nearly as much weight on the palate. I mean, that's pretty rich. I think opulent is a wonderful word, I think, to describe it. Wow.
That's, you know, I'm probably sold on number 3.
So far
over 1 and 2.
I think I'm with you. I don't even need to take notes on it.
Let's bounce on to number 4.
All right, sounds great.
A little bit less concentrated than wine number 3, and a little bit more of a ruby hue on that meniscus again. Could be an indication of a slightly more time in oak.
Sure.
Could be.
And it certainly has more than what's going on in wine number 2. I didn't leave much of one here, so it's kind of tough to determine. But
I love the nose on it, though.
You know what kind of jumped out to me initially is kind of like that caramelized stave that you just brought up initially.
That caramelized oak barrel.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. The fruit goes back in the other direction of being a little bit more restrained and elegant. It's not as sort of opulent and liqueured and concentrated as wine number 3, but it's definitely there in currant with red currant, black currant. I mean, these are fruit profiles that you're always going to hear discussed with Cabernet Sauvignons.
Sure.
You know, if Pinot Noir is consistently smelling of rhubarb and pomegranate and candied raspberry, Cabernet, this is currant town. Black cherry town, black fruits, very majestic. You know, Cabernet Sauvignon oftentimes reminds me, it's like the king at court.
Sure.
Very serious, you know, very intense. Pinot Noir is more like the queen at court.
Much more elegant and just effeminate. And
still majestic, but just kind of pretty and kind of demands your respect and obedience by how beautiful she is. And then you got Zinfandel, which is like the court jester. It's, you know, in the corner.
Totally clowning.
Right. Right. And I love me some Zinfandel. I'm just saying that's how I see him in my head.
Sure. All right.
Yeah, it's a great palate. I mean, it's serious, it's present. There's good acid structure there that really stands out. I think it has a little bit more acid structure than wine number 3.
Yeah, I would say that.
And it's restrained on that decadence, that opulence, that wine number 3.
Tannins are still firm.
Yep.
But well integrated again.
That might be a contender. I mean, to me, that's definitely second to 3 at this point. so far. I mean, we still need to see what wines 5 and 6 have.
Sure, but I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, I would say we agree just based on what wine number 3 offers that the other 3 at this point are kind of lacking.
Right. And I'm going to revisit 4 and 3.
Side by side.
Cool. Yeah, when we get past 5 and 6.
Let's move on to 5.
See how hard work this is?
I know, you envy us, don't you? But here's the deal. At the end, we'll reveal what these wines are, and then, of course, you can come shop with us at Crown, and we're going to give you a discount at 15% off all these bottles. So always keep in mind, share the video with your friends, and that way you get that discount. So back to wine number 5.
I'm already there.
It's pretty serious on the nose, too, there.
Yeah, this is rough work. I mean, I smell this wine, and it's, I mean, this kind of like number 4. I mean, these are disciplined wines. This is overt and very aromatic and very profound.
Flashy.
Yeah, more flashy. These guys are both kind of serious. They're straight brown wines.
Yeah, cerebral.
Again, very firm tannins. Seems to have less alcohol than the others.
Slightly more moderate.
Yeah, it's. I'm not really feeling that same upper 14 higher level of alcohol. So a little bit less body, but you know, still
slightly
has
less.
Some tannins to it.
But it's not like it's hollow in the mid palate or something like that.
No,
I mean,
no, not at all.
I think it's a nice representation. I mean, I think at this point, you know, I'm thinking 3 so far. I might even place 5 over 4 at this point. And I think 1 and 2 just are kind of bringing up the rear end at this point.
I think I'm probably still 1 and 2, and then 5 after 4. And then these guys are after that. So wine number 6.
Wine number 6.
Let's see how this all comes together. It's more floral than the others. I mean, we haven't been discussing florality at all in these, but I mean, this kind of has that.
Because I think most of it has been pretty fruit dominant.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, you know, having those other floral types of components.
No, there's a violet and a lavender element.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. That I agree with you. It just hasn't been present in some of the other wines. Yeah, we'll see what's on the palate.
There's also a little bit of an anise characteristic too.
You know, so for people that don't know, that black licorice aroma and flavor.
Yeah, slight phenolly, anise, star anise, black licorice sort of element to it. And a floral character.
All right, let's wrap this thing up.
Where are you at?
Where are we going? Go back to 3 real quick. All right.
What's your call?
I think it's still 3. I think it is. I mean, I think just for the overall character and the majestic nature of it, and I think really how wonderfully well integrated everything is from top to bottom. Are you with me?
I'm really, really happy with 3. I'm really happy with 4, and I think 5 afterwards.
5 or 6?
6. 6.
All right.
And then 5, and then 1 and 2. So,
so we're going to go 3's number 1.
3, 4, 6, 5, 1, then 2. That's where I'm at. Discrepancy?
I think I'm going to go 3, 6, 4, 5, 1, 2.
All right, so we got a little bit of a discrepancy between 4 and 6, but hey.
But just minimal. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers. Thanks, Arthur.
Yep.